Welcome to the fourth Understanding the IPCC presentation. In exchange for freedom of inquiry, scientists are obliged to explain their work. If science is considered a closed priesthood, too difficult and arcane for the average listener to understand, the dangers of abuse are greater.
Reader available.
But if science is a topic of general interest and concern, if both its delights and its social consequences are discussed regularly and competently in schools, the press, and at the dinner table, we have greatly improved our prospects for learning how the world really is, and for improving both it and us. That quote is from Carl Sagan. His 1979 book broke his brain, for which he received a Pulitzer Prize. You can see information about him here. World-famous astronomer, astrophysicist, humanitarian, and other stuff. And we're trying to do the same kind of thing.
Keyboard hints.
That's not what I wanted to do.
Weather can.
Well, we'll have to do it this way then.
App switcher. Books. Files. Safari. Safari. Reader available. Website not secure. Back. Dimmed. Button. View.
Hello.
Viewfinder. HDR. Timer. Camera chooser. Back facing. Camera chooser.
Front now.
Facing.
Hello. I'm assuming I'm there somewhere.
Voiceover off.
Turn that off. Welcome to Climate Change 2014, Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability, the first part. We're doing something different yet again, because these things keep getting longer and longer, and it has to stop. This report is 1,800 pages, 46 chapters. It's just untenable. Oh, by the way, I'm Kerry Rutherford. I'm the guy who's presenting these videos, and this is my handy little note keeper in Girma. Accessibility of this material is important to me, for obvious reasons, as is its usability and its credibility. So consequently, what I've done, I'm dividing this into three sections: an introduction, an oral section, and, visual section, and an oral section. And I'm breaking the content in half. The visual elements, obviously for the sighted, the intro and the oral sections are for everybody, but you'll find they're quite a bit longer. There's 3 hours of content, which I have divided into a first and a second part, for reasons that I think are obvious. Previous presentations I've created introduce the context and the foundation of this particular report, and I'm not going to repeat that information just because this thing's already far too long. So, I gotta do this.
Voiceover on. Weather can.
Yeah, I know.
Maps. App switcher. Files. Safari.
That's what we want.
A talking game.
So this is where I'm presenting this information, a talking game.
40. A talking game YouTube channel.
So,
link.
the other presentations are all available.
Open, cancel, button.
On YouTube. I don't want to go to...
A talking game YouTube channel. Link.
I have to wait for Esmeralda to be quiet. So
Back.
here, this is
Button.
where they are stored.
Show more. Show more.
Let's do that.
Introduction from Indigenous Whiteness. Who they are. Number 1.
Who they are is the first
Intergovernmental Panel on
presentation.
Climate Change. Action menu. What they say. Number 2.
What they say.
The IPCC's Working Group I.
On the physical science basis
of their reports.
So, as an example of the
Link.
foundational nature of the information that I'm building, the report that we're talking about today, which is not on this site yet, I'm recording it right now, makes reference to something I dealt with in what they say. I think it's number 2, right?
Action what they say number 2.
Yeah.
The IPCC's Working Group I on the physical science basis of their reports. Heading Level 4. Ling.
So, I'm not recommending that the video I'm creating today be where you start this stuff. Please consider looking at these early reports. If this is your introduction, there's, as you can see right there, there's an introduction video which I highly recommend if you don't know why I'm going on about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, why my iPad is talking to you, why I'm wearing these sunglasses, etc., etc. Or if the basic science, it's a little bit beyond basic, is new to you and you want some grounding in that. I try to build the information into what I'm presenting. In any event, in that video, at about 16 minutes, number 2 there, what they say, I deal with something called representative concentration pathways. RCPs are present in the report we're going to be looking at today. They occur a fair number of times, and they also occur in other reports. So if you want to go see what I've had to say, as I said, if you go to number 2 there, about 16 minutes in, I start doing about, I don't know, it's 5 or 10 minutes, pardon me, about RCPs. If you're of the visual element, where is that?
App switcher, files, books, Safari, active.
So, this is the page that I look at in that video, so you can actually see, if you want, you can pause the video and you can read the page that talks about RCPs.
Reading now.
Yeah, I know.
Heading.
As long as you open...
Share. Bookmark. Bullet sustain. Bullet method. Box SPM.
There we go.
1. Representative concentration pathways. RCPs.
Right. So this page deals with that issue. I also noticed that it's telling me something. So, and this document...
Library. Button. Library.
Gotta go back
Reading
there.
now. Bookstore. Library. Tab. 2 of 5. Library. Edit. Collections.
So these are collections of documents I have uploaded. Downloaded.
122. Rows 20. SP50. AR5 mitigation. AR5 impacts. Adaptations and vulnerabilities.
This is the report we're dealing with today.
Button.
You can see here
2 foundations for decision making. Page 2 of 7.
There's 46 chapters here for this. There's actually 48 because a couple of these are mine, but the 46 chapters of theirs are here. There's a lot of information.
Page 3 of 7.
So what I've done to make this easier for you is as I said in the previous one, I've made a gift for you.
App switcher. Camera. Active.
Oh, I can turn that off.
Closing files. Files.
That's what I want.
Files. Browse. Africa. Central Europe. North America. Small. The ocean. WGI selected.
I've created
WGI index
an index page.
Button.
So what this is, so I'm going to be going through about 10 chapters in the course of this report. Obviously 46 is way too much. I've chosen the second section, which is regional, and to make it easier to follow as you're going through it, instead of going through the chapters numerically, I'm going through them alphabetically, so that after you've gone through Africa and Asia, for example, you'll probably remember that Australasia is next and not North America or something. So don't be deceived by the chapter numbers. I'm going alphabetically. That also allows you, should you not be interested in listening to this thing at great length, you could, of course, go to the Africa section, stop the video, just have a look at the page, knowing that, if you look at the top up here,
WGI markup, share, Working Group 2. Index, Part B Regional Notes equals 24 pages at approximately 7:15/full page.
yeah, so each page is about 7 minutes and 15 seconds of reading. So if you want to get to the third chapter, Africa, if you want to get to Asia, for example, you can go, well, Africa is, I think, 3 pages, and Asia is 2 pages. I'm pretending, I don't know. And so we can do the math, and you can figure out how to get to the Australasia section. Let's pretend it's 5 times, so about 35, 40 minutes in. Just fast forward. I will actually, once I've finished this recording, I will go back and put in accurate times in the comments section. Also in the comments will be extensive notes about these documents, their accreditation, links to where you can find them if you want to get them yourself. It's important to me to provide you the ability to get to this information. So if you're looking at this on YouTube, the comments will be lengthy and explicit, and they will tell you how to find all this stuff. And as I said, they'll have actual timings once I've finished. Oh,
App Switcher.
and
Files. Safari. Books. Files.
nearly forgot. And for those,
Files.
as I
Done.
mentioned, accessibility
Button.
is important.
Africa Chapter 20. Done.
So,
Button. Markup. Climate. Working Group.
So for
Climate
people
Change
who are
2000
listening,
and share.
for people who are
Button.
listening, I'm going to run through this so that visual access people, you could maybe take a screenshot of this so you have it handy for later. After an hour, you may not remember what comes next, and you can just look at a screenshot. And if you're listening to this, if you make some notes, I'm going to let it read through the index right now.
Share. Button. Climate Change 2014. Impacts. Adaptation and Vulnerability. Working Group 2. Index. Part B Regional Notes equals 24 pages at approximately 7:15/full page. Accurate timings will be available after recording in YouTube comments. The first part, 10 pgs. Africa Chapter 22, 3 pgs. Asia Chapter 24, 2 pgs. Australasia Chapter 25, 3 pgs. Central and South America Chapter 27, 2 pgs. The second part, 14 pgs. Europe Chapter 23, 3 pgs. North America Chapter 26, 3 pgs. Ocean Chapter 30, 4 pgs. Polar Regions Chapter 28, 2 pgs. Small Islands Chapter 29, 2 pgs.
All right. Hope you got that.
App Switcher. Files. Active. Books. Active.
Back to books.
Books. Library. Back button. 14 Adaptation needs an option. Page 4. 22 Africa. Nyang. Page. Annex I authors and Annex I. Climate check. Cross check. Errata. Front matter part A.
So we're going to go through some introductory stuff
Front matter
first.
part A. Library. Button. The Working Group. Preface. Scope of the report. Scope. The Working Group 2 contribution to the 5th Assessment Report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC WGII-AR5, considers climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. It provides a comprehensive, up-to-date picture of the current state of knowledge and level of certainty, based on the available scientific, technical, and socio-economic literature. As with all IPCC products, the report is the result of an assessment process designed to highlight both big-picture messages and key details, to integrate knowledge from diverse disciplines, to evaluate the strength of evidence underlying findings, and to identify topics where understanding is incomplete. The focus of the assessment is providing information to support good decisions by stakeholders at all levels. The assessment is a unique source of background for decision support, while scrupulously avoiding advocacy for particular policy options. Scope of the report. Climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability span a vast range of topics. With the deepening of knowledge about climate change, we see connections in expanding and diverse areas, activities, and assets at risk. Early research focused on direct impacts of temperature and rainfall on humans, crops, and wild plants and animals. New evidence points to the importance of understanding not only these direct impacts but also potential indirect impacts, including impacts that can be transmitted around the world through trade, travel, and security. As a consequence, few aspects of the human endeavor or of natural ecosystem processes are isolated from possible impacts in a changing climate. The interconnectedness of the Earth system makes it impossible to draw a confined boundary around climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. This report does not attempt to bound the issue. Instead, it focuses on core elements and identifies connecting points where the issue of climate change overlaps with or merges into other issues. The integrity the report is page choose prep book that in the report the report is published in two parts. Part A covers global scale topics for a wide range of sectors, covering physical, biological, and human systems. Part B considers the same topics, but from a regional perspective, exploring the issues that arise from the juxtaposition of climate change, environment, and available resources. Conceptually, there is some overlap between the material in parts A and B, but the contrast in framing makes each part uniquely relevant to a particular group of stakeholders. For setting context and meeting library button library front matter part B in SPM summary for policymakers CP field 26% finished.
I forgot to mention
button.
also, to make this material more accessible, I am going to let my iPad, Esmeralda, read the titles of the chapters so that people who are just listening will know where it is we're going and we're not just flitting about randomly. So I will, so that last chapter.
Questions about the double in front matter part A, C.
That's where we started.
In quest SPM summary for policymakers, C.
And that's where we're going.
Field. SPM summary for policymaker library. Compared to past, human interference with the climate system is occurring. And climate change poses risks for human and natural systems. Figure SPM 1. The assessment of impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability in the Working Group 2 contribution to the IPCC's Fifth Assessment Report, WGIIAR5, evaluates how patterns of risks and potential benefits are shifting due to climate change. It considers how impacts and risks related to climate change can be reduced and managed through adaptation and mitigation. The report assesses needs, options, opportunities, constraints, resilience, limits, and other aspects associated with adaptation. Climate change involves complex interactions and changing likelihoods of diverse impacts. A focus on risk, which is new in this report, supports decision-making in the context of climate change and complements other elements of the report. People and societies may perceive or rank risks and potential benefits differently, given diverse values and goals. Compare set 1 to 1 SPM summary for assessing and impacts, emissions and figure SPM 1 vertical line illustration of the core concepts of the WGIIAR5. Risk of climate-related impacts results from the interaction of climate-related hazards, including hazardous events and trends, with the vulnerability and exposure of human and natural systems. Changes in both the climate system, left, and socio-economic processes including adaptation and mitigation, right, are drivers of hazards, exposure, and vulnerability. 19.2, Figure 19. Library. Button. Library. SPM summary. Page 6 of page 5 of page 4 of 7. Page 1 of 7.
Again and again, as I say in every presentation, this is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change material. As much as possible, I'm leaving it entirely untouched. That's one reason I skip around so much. It's so you can see where the information is coming from, which means you can also go find it again yourself, but also to show this, I'm not interpreting this. I am, of course, selecting information, but it's 1,800 pages. I've got to do some selecting. Otherwise, well, it would be a graduate course and you'd spend 5 years doing this.
6 oceans. 3 fresh, drag item. 2 foundations. 2 foundations for library. But, decisions. 2. Decision support, executive summary. Decision support for impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability is expanding from science-driven linear methods to a wide range of methods drawing from many disciplines, robust evidence, high agreement. This chapter introduces new material from disciplines including behavioral science, ethics, and cultural and organizational theory, thus providing a broader perspective on climate change decision-making. Previous assessment methods and policy advice have been framed by the assumption that better science will lead to better decisions. Extensive evidence from the decision sciences shows that while good scientific and technical information is necessary, it is not sufficient, and decisions require context-appropriate decision support processes and tools, robust evidence. High agreement. There now exists a sufficiently rich set of available methods, tools, and processes to support effective climate impact, adaptation, and vulnerability, SIAV, decisions in a wide range of contexts, medium evidence, medium agreement, although they may not always be appropriately combined or readily accessible to decision makers, left curly bracket 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Risk management provides a useful framework for most climate change decision making. Iterative risk management is most suitable in situations characterized by large uncertainties, long time frames, the potential for learning over time, and the influence of both climate as well as other socio-economic and biophysical changes. Robust evidence, high agreement. Complex decision-making contexts will ideally apply a broad definition of risk, address and manage relevant perceived risks, and assess the risks of a broad range of plausible future outcomes and alternative risk management actions. Robust evidence, medium agreement. The resulting challenges for people and organizations to apply SIAV decision-making processes in ways that address their specific aims, left curly bracket 2. Decision support is situated at the intersection of data provision, expert knowledge, and human decision-making at a range of scales from the individual to the organization and institution. Decision support is defined as a set of processes intended to create the conditions for the production of decision-relevant information and its appropriate use. Such support is most effective when it is context-sensitive, taking account of the diversity of different types of decisions, decision processes, and constituencies. Robust evidence, high agreement. Boundary organizations, including climate services, play an important role in climate change knowledge transfer and communication, including translation, engagement, and knowledge exchange. Medium evidence, high agreement. Dart, left curly. Scenarios are a key tool for addressing uncertainty. Robust evidence, high agreement. They can be divided into those that explore how futures may unfold under various drivers, problem exploration, and those that test how various interventions may play out, solution exploration. Historically, most scenarios used for SIAV assessments have been of the former type, though the latter are becoming more prevalent. Medium evidence, high agreement. The new RCP scenario process can address both problem and solution framing in ways that previous IPCC scenarios have not been able to. Limited evidence, medium agreement, left curly bracket 2.
There's the first mention of the RCP.
1. SIAV decision-making involves ethical judgments expressed at a range of institutional scales. The resulting ethical judgments are a key part of risk governance. Robust evidence, medium agreement. Recognition of local and indigenous knowledge and diverse stakeholder interests, values, and expectations is fundamental to building trust within decision-making processes. Robust evidence, high agreement. Dart, left curly bracket. Climate services aim to make knowledge about climate accessible to a wide range of decision makers. In doing so, they have to consider information supply, competing sources of knowledge, and user demand. Knowledge transfer is a negotiated process that takes a variety of cultural values, orientations, and alternative forms of knowledge into account, medium evidence, high agreement, left curly bracket 2. Climate change response can be linked with sustainable development through actions that enhance resilience, the capacity to change in order to maintain the same identity while also maintaining the capacity to adapt, learn, and transform. Mainstreamed adaptation, disaster risk management, and new types of governance and institutional arrangements are being studied for their potential to support the goal of enhanced resilience, medium evidence, high agreement. Left curly. Transformational adaptation may be required if incremental adaptation proves insufficient, medium evidence, high agreement. This process may require changes in existing social structures, institutions, and values, which can be facilitated by iterative risk management and triple-loop learning that considers a situation and its drivers, along with the underlying frames and values that provide the situation context. Left curly bracket 2, Chapter 2 Foundations for Decision Making. 5th, Library. Button. Library. Back button. Act 3 Freshwater Resources. Page 3 of 7. Page 4 of 23 Europe. 22 Africa. 22 Africa. Library. Button.
So that's the end of the introduction.
Apps, Safari, Books, Doc, Safari, Files, Active.
I'm just going to show you the index once
Files.
more.
Done. The Europe Chapter 23,
Right.
the second, Africa Chapter 22,
Africa,
Asia Chapter, Australasia, Central and South America Chapter 27,
that's all in the first part.
2 PGS.
So that's where we're going. I've consistently recommended that people taking this information in take a break when possible. I will be, unlike my first couple of videos when I just relied on text, I will be including charts and diagrams that you can pause the video and let it sit and have a look at it at great length, like this one here, if you wish. I would recommend, if you don't have coffee yet, given that we've got at least an hour worth of stuff here, I hate to break it to you, if you're going through this from front to back, make yourself something that will help you keep going. I don't know if it's jasmine tea or a double stuff Oreo. Should I recommend that? Or carrot? Anyway, or a breath of air. Anyway, this is your time. Pause the video. Unpause the video, because we're going to go.
Apps, Safari, Books, Active. Books.
And let me tell you,
Evidence of warming.
When I recommend you should take a break,
African
it's probably a good idea.
A reduction. Evidence of 22 mean annual temperature. Evidence. Chapter 20. Bookmark. Chapter 22 Africa.
There we go.
Chapter 22 Africa. Executive summary. Evidence of warming over land regions across Africa, consistent with anthropogenic climate change, has increased. High confidence. Decadal analyses of temperatures strongly point to an increased warming trend across the continent over the last 50 to 100 years. Left curly bracket 22. 1 right curly bracket. 22 mean annual temperature rise over Africa, relative to the late 20th century mean annual temperature, is likely to exceed 2 degrees Celsius in the Special Report on Emissions Scenarios, SRES, A1B and A2 scenarios by the end of this century. Medium confidence. Warming projections under medium scenarios indicate that extensive areas of Africa will exceed 2 degrees Celsius by the last 2 decades of this century relative to the late 20th century mean annual temperature, and all of Africa under high emission scenarios. Under a high representative concentration pathway, RCP, that exceedance could occur by mid-century across much of Africa and reach between 3 degrees Celsius and 6 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. It is likely that land temperatures over Africa will rise faster than the global land average, particularly in the more arid regions, and that the rate of increase in minimum temperatures will exceed that of maximum temperatures. Left curly bracket 22. dot 2 dot 1 dot 2 right curly bracket. A reduction in precipitation is likely over northern Africa and the southwestern parts of South Africa by the end of the 21st century under the SRESA-1B and A2 scenarios, medium to high confidence. Projected rainfall change over sub-Saharan Africa in the mid and late 21st century is uncertain. In regions of high or complex topography such as the Ethiopian highlands, downscaled projections indicate likely increases in rainfall and extreme rainfall by the end of the 21st century. Left curly bracket 22 dot 2 dot 2 dot 2 22.2.3 right curly bracket. African ecosystems are already being affected by climate change, and future impacts are expected to be substantial. High confidence. There is emerging evidence on shifting ranges of some species and ecosystems due to elevated carbon dioxide, CO2, and climate change, beyond the effects of land use change and other non-climate stresses. High confidence. Ocean ecosystems, in particular coral reefs, will be affected by ocean acidification and warming as well as changes in ocean upwellings, thus negatively affecting economic sectors such as fisheries. Medium confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 22.3.2, table 22, 3 right curly bracket. Climate change will amplify existing stress on water availability in Africa. High confidence. Water resources are subjected to high hydroclimatic variability over space and time, and are a key constraint on the continent's continued economic development. The impacts of climate change will be superimposed onto already water-stressed catchments with complex land uses, engineered water systems, and a strong historical socio-political and economic footprint. Strategies that integrate land and water management, and disaster risk reduction. Within a framework of emerging climate change risks would bolster resilient development in the face of projected impacts of climate change. Left curly bracket 22, dot, 3, dot, 2, dot, 2, 22.3.3 right curly bracket. Climate change will interact with non-climate drivers and stresses to exacerbate vulnerability of agricultural systems, particularly in semi-arid areas. High confidence. Increasing temperatures and changes in precipitation are very likely to reduce cereal crop productivity. This will have strong adverse effects on food security. New evidence is also emerging that high-value perennial crops could also be adversely affected by temperature rise. Medium confidence. Pest, weed, and disease pressure on crops and livestock is expected to increase as a result of climate change combined with other factors. Low confidence. Moreover, new challenges to food security are emerging as a result of strong urbanization trends on the continent and increasingly globalized food chains, which require better understanding of the multi-stressor context of food and livelihood security in both urban and rural contexts in Africa. Left curly bracket 22. Dot 3 dot 4 dot 3 22 dot 3 dot 4 dot 5 right curly bracket. Progress has been achieved on managing risks to food production from current climate variability and near-term climate change, but these will not be sufficient to address long-term impacts of climate change. High confidence. Livelihood-based approaches for managing risks to food production from multiple stresses, including rainfall variability, have increased substantially in Africa since the IPCC's fourth assessment report, AR5. While these efforts can improve the resiliency of agricultural systems in Africa over the near term, current adaptations will be insufficient for managing risks from long-term climate change, which will be variable across regions and farming system types. Nonetheless, processes such as collaborative, participatory research that includes scientists and farmers, strengthening of communication systems for anticipating and responding to climate risks, and increased flexibility in livelihood options, which serve to strengthen coping strategies in agriculture for near-term risks from climate variability, provide potential pathways for strengthening adaptive capacities for climate change. Left curly bracket 22, dot, 4, dot, 5, dot, 4, 22, dot, 4, dot, 5, dot, 7, 22.4.6. 22.6.2 right curly bracket 1202. Africa Chapter 22. Climate change may increase the burden of Africa Chapter 22. App switcher. Books. File. Book. Files.
So as I said, I'm trying to incorporate some tables and charts.
Files. Done. Button. Done. The Central and South Australasia chap. Done. Done. Edit. Locations. Australasia. Africa. 2i. Selected. Browse.
These are from
Heading.
the executive summaries.
Locations. iCloud Drive. Recently. Table 22 dash. Table 22. List view. Table 22 dash 3. Selected. Done.
Since
Button.
they're JPEGs, I can't interpret the images. I don't know what's on them. It's table 22.3. Oh, right. Remember I said...
Done. Item list. Table 22-3, 1 of 2.
There's the indication
Heading.
of where we are. And I can't do anything about the endless curly brackets. I tried to jump them every time, and it's too difficult to be consistent and not mess up, so you're just going to have to listen to the curly brackets. I'll remind you that the numbers in the brackets are the sections in the actual chapter where those topics are expanded on. So 22.3.1 is a section in chapter 23. Obviously it's section 22.3.1, and so that might be useful if you get your hands on the actual report, which you can do at www.ipcc.ch.
App switcher. Safari. Active. Actions
It
about
occurs to me that I didn't actually...
Action menu. Indigenous Whiteness Research
I didn't
Paper
actually
Overview.
show you their page.
Heading level 4. Left. Back.
This is the
Dim.
IPCC
Button.
page where the report exists.
AR5 Climate Change 2014, Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability.
And all
Heading
this
level
stuff
1.
comes from there.
Apps, Books, Active. Book. Conservation, Africa Chapter 22. Climate change may increase the burden of a range of climate-relevant health outcomes, medium confidence. Climate change is a multiplier of existing health vulnerabilities, high confidence, including insufficient access to safe water and improved sanitation, food insecurity, and limited access to health care and education, left curly bracket 22.3.5.1 right curly bracket. Detection and attribution of trends is difficult because of the complexity of disease transmission. With many drivers other than weather and climate, and short and often incomplete data sets, evidence is growing that highland areas, especially in East Africa, could experience increased malaria epidemics due to climate change. Medium evidence, very high agreement. The strong seasonality of meningococcal meningitis and associations with weather and climate 22 variability suggest the disease burden could be negatively affected by climate change. Medium evidence, high agreement. The frequency of leishmaniasis epidemics in sub-Saharan Africa is changing, with spatial spread to peri-urban areas and to adjacent geographic regions, with possible contributions from changing rainfall patterns. Low confidence. Climate change is projected to increase the burden of malnutrition. Medium confidence, with the highest toll expected in children. Left curly bracket 22.3.5.3 right curly bracket. In all regions of the continent, national governments are initiating governance systems for adaptation and responding to climate change. But evolving institutional frameworks cannot yet effectively coordinate the range of adaptation initiatives being implemented. High confidence. Progress on national and subnational policies and strategies has initiated the mainstreaming of adaptation into sectoral planning. Left curly bracket 22.4.4 right curly bracket. However, incomplete, under-resourced, and fragmented institutional frameworks and overall low levels of adaptive capacity, especially competency at local government levels, to manage complex socio-ecological change translate into a largely ad hoc and project-level approach, which is often donor-driven, left curly bracket 22.4.2, 22.4.34, right curly bracket overall adaptive capacity is considered to be low, left curly bracket 22.4.2, right curly bracket disaster risk reduction, social protection, technological and infrastructural adaptation, ecosystem-based approaches, and livelihood diversification are reducing vulnerability, but largely in isolated initiatives. Left curly bracket 22.4.5, right curly bracket most adaptations remain autonomous and reactive to short-term motivations. Left curly bracket 22.4.3, 22.4.4.5, right curly bracket. Conservation agriculture provides a viable means for strengthening resilience in agroecosystems and livelihoods that also advance adaptation goals. High confidence. A wide array of conservation agriculture practices, including agroforestry and farmer-managed natural tree regeneration, conservation tillage, contouring and terracing, and mulching, are being increasingly adopted in Africa. These practices strengthen resilience of the land base to extreme events and broaden sources of livelihoods, both of which have strongly positive implications for climate risk management and adaptation. Moreover, conservation agriculture has direct adaptation mitigation co-benefits. Addressing constraints to broader adoption of these practices, such as land tenure/usufruct stability, access to peer-to-peer learning, gender-oriented extension and credit and markets, as well as identification of perverse policy incentives, would help to enable larger-scale transformation of agricultural landscapes. Left curly bracket 22.4.5.6, 22.4.5.7, 22.4.6, 22.6.2, right curly bracket. Despite implementation limitations, Africa's adaptation experiences nonetheless highlight valuable lessons for enhancing and scaling up the adaptation response, including principles for good practice and integrated approaches to adaptation. High confidence. 5 common principles for adaptation and building adaptive capacity can be distilled. 1. Supporting autonomous adaptation through a policy that recognizes the multiple stressor nature of vulnerable livelihoods. 2. Increasing attention to the cultural, ethical, and rights considerations of adaptation by increasing the participation of women, youth, and poor and vulnerable people in adaptation policy and implementation. 3. Combining soft path options and flexible and iterative learning approaches with technological and infrastructural approaches and blending scientific, local, and indigenous knowledge when developing adaptation strategies. 4. Focusing on building resilience and implementing low regrets adaptation with development synergies, in the face of future climate and socio-economic uncertainties. And 5. Building adaptive management and social and institutional learning into adaptation processes at all levels. Left curly bracket 22.4, right curly bracket ecosystem-based approaches and pro-poor integrated adaptation. Mitigation initiatives hold promise for a more sustainable and system-oriented approach to adaptation, as does promoting equity goals, key for future resilience. Through emphasizing gender aspects and highly vulnerable groups such as children, left curly bracket 22.4.2, 22.4.5.6, 22.6.2, table 22, 5 right curly bracket. Strengthened interlinkages between adaptation and development pathways and a focus on building resilience would help to counter the current adaptation deficit and reduce future maladaptation risks. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 22.4.3, right curly bracket. Development strategies are currently not able to counter current climate risks, as highlighted by the impacts of recent extreme events. National policies that disregard cultural, traditional, and context-specific factors can act as barriers to local adaptation, and there is increased knowledge of maladaptation risks from narrowly conceived development interventions and sectoral adaptation strategies that decrease resilience in other sectors or ecosystems. 1203. Chapter 22 Africa. left curly bracket 22.4.4, 22.4.6 right curly bracket given multiple files, active, files, done, button, item, done, button, browse, table 22- list view, table 22-3, table 22-4, August, selected, done, button, item list, table 22-4, 2 of 2, heading.
I'm not able to find all of the tables and boxes and figures that they include in the executive summaries, but so these are not necessarily placed immediately after the reference, and hopefully they're useful.
App switcher, Safari, active, books, books, climate change, chapter left curly bracket 22. Growing understanding of the multiple interlinked constraints on increasing adaptive capacity is beginning to indicate potential limits to adaptation in Africa. Medium confidence. Climate change combined with other external changes, environmental, social, political, technological, may overwhelm the ability of people to cope and adapt, especially if the root causes of poverty and vulnerability are not addressed. Evidence is growing for the effectiveness of flexible and diverse development systems that are designed to reduce vulnerability, spread risk, and build adaptive capacity. These points indicate the benefits of new development trajectories that place climate resilience, ecosystem stability, equity, and justice at the center of development efforts. Left curly bracket 22.4.6 right curly bracket. There is increased evidence of the significant financial resources, technological support, and investment in institutional and capacity development needed to address climate risk, build adaptive capacity, and implement robust adaptation strategies. High confidence. Funding and technology transfer and support is needed to both address Africa's current adaptation deficit and to protect rural and urban livelihoods, societies, and economies from climate change impacts at different local scales. Left curly bracket 22.4, 22.6.4 right curly bracket strengthening institutional capacities and governance mechanisms to enhance the ability of national governments and scientific institutions in Africa to absorb and effectively manage large amounts of funds allocated for adaptation will help to ensure the effectiveness of adaptation initiatives. Medium confidence. Left curly bracket 22.6.4 right curly bracket. Climate change and climate variability have the potential to exacerbate or multiply existing threats to human security, including food, health, and economic insecurity, all being of particular concern for Africa. Medium confidence. Left curly bracket 22.6.1 right curly bracket. Many of these threats are known drivers of conflict. High confidence. Causality between climate change and violent conflict is difficult to establish owing to the presence of these and other interconnected causes, including country-specific socio-political, economic, and cultural factors. For example, the degradation of natural resources as a result of both overexploitation and climate change will contribute to increased conflicts over the distribution of these resources. Left curly bracket 22.6.1. 1 right curly bracket. Many of the interacting social, demographic, and economic drivers of observed urbanization and migration in Africa are sensitive to climate change impacts. Left curly bracket 22.6.1.2 right curly bracket. A wide range of data and research gaps constrain decision making in processes to reduce vulnerability, build resilience, and plan and implement adaptation strategies at different levels in Africa. High confidence. Overarching data and research gaps identified include data management and monitoring of climate parameters and development of climate change scenarios, monitoring systems to address climate change impacts in the different sectors, research and improved methodologies to assess and quantify the impact of climate change on different sectors and systems, and socio-economic consequences of the loss of ecosystems, of economic activities, of certain mitigation choices such as biofuels, and of adaptation strategies. left curly bracket 22.7 right curly bracket. Of 9 climate-related key regional risks identified for Africa, 8 pose medium or higher risk even with highly adapted systems, while only 1 key risk assessed can be potentially reduced with high adaptation to below a medium risk level. For the end of the 21st century, under 2 degrees Celsius global mean temperature increase above pre-industrial levels, medium confidence. Key regional risks relating to shifts in biome distribution, loss of coral reefs, reduced crop productivity, adverse effects on livestock, vector and waterborne diseases, undernutrition, and migration are assessed as either medium or high for the present under current adaptation, reflecting Africa's existing adaptation deficit, left curly bracket 22.3.12, 22.3.45, 22.6.1.2 right curly bracket. The assessment of significant residual impacts in a 2 degrees Celsius world at the end of the 21st century suggests that, even under high levels of adaptation, there could be very high levels of risk for Africa. At a global mean temperature increase of 4 degrees Celsius, risks for Africa's food security, key risks on livestock and crop production, are assessed as very high, with limited potential for risk reduction through adaptation. Left curly bracket 22.3.4, 22.4.5, 22.5, table 22, 6 right curly bracket 1204. Africa. Chapter 22. 22.1. Introduction. Library. Button.
So it's
Library. Back button.
it's a learning tourism that
Actions available.
where'd it go?
23 Europe. 23 Europe. 24 Asia. Y.
That human attention is good for about 10 minutes.
24 Asia. Y. Library.
So
button.
if you're involved in some long-term thing, usually the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of any particularly focused period is what you remember. So if it's a 35-minute presentation, you'll remember the first and last 10 minutes the best, and the middle 15 minutes will kind of disappear. And I mention that because the Africa section, 3 pages, 7.25 minutes per page, is about 21 minutes. So it's a good time to refresh your brain if you didn't do so yet. I will take this opportunity to point out
Page chooser. Page 4. Page 1.
that for each region, Africa, Asia, Australasia, Europe, Central and South America, etc., the IPCC, not surprisingly, tended to focus the people involved in writing and editing from that region. So you'll find that the Africa section has, at the beginning, has more African contributors. The Asia section, as you're looking at here, will have more Asian writers and editors, not all of them, but a higher proportion. And same is true of each one. And I mention this because, interestingly, the tables and figures that I found in the executive summaries, the Asia chapter had none listed. So they thought that it was not a good place for tables and figures, or they're less focused on visual elements, or who knows, maybe the rest of the chapter is loaded to the gunnels and they didn't feel they could also pile it on you in the executive summary. It's just an interesting point.
Page chooser. 1 of 40.
I mentioned that
page 3.
because
Page 4.
So there's no images in this section. However, to
Apps. Safari.
deal with
Active.
that, you're quite welcome to go
Safari.
and look for images here, right?
Back. AR5 Climate Change 2014. Impacts, Adaptation, and Vulnerability.
I'm
Heading Level 1.
a little less than subtle in my promotion of
App
going
switcher.
to the actual source,
Files. Books. Active.
because that's important.
Books. Water scarcity is 24. Executive summary 24. Bookmarks. Search. Markup 24 Asia.
There we go.
Heading. Mark. Search. Bookmarks 24. Executive summary. Warming trends and increasing temperature extremes have been observed across most of the Asian region over the past century. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.3 right curly bracket. Increasing numbers of warm days and decreasing numbers of cold days have been observed, with the warming trend continuing into the new millennium. Precipitation trends including extremes are characterized by strong variability, with both increasing and decreasing trends observed in different parts and seasons of Asia. Water scarcity is expected to be a major challenge for most of the region as a result of increased water demand and lack of good management. Medium confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.4.3 right curly bracket. Water resources are important in Asia because of the massive population and vary among regions and seasons. However, there is low confidence in future precipitation projections at a sub-regional scale and thus in future freshwater availability in most parts of Asia. Population growth and increasing demand arising from higher standards of living could worsen water security in many parts in Asia and affect many people in the future. Integrated water management strategies could help adapt to climate change, including developing water-saving technologies, increasing water productivity, and water reuse. The impacts of climate change on food production and food security in Asia will vary by region, with many regions to experience a decline in productivity. Medium confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.4.4 right curly bracket. This is evident in the case of rice production. Most models, using a range of general circulation models, GCMs, and special report on emission scenarios, SRES, scenarios, show that higher temperatures will lead to lower rice yields as a result of shorter growing periods. There are a number of regions that are already near the heat stress limits for rice. However, carbon dioxide, CO2, fertilization may at least in part offset yield losses in rice and other crops. In Central Asia, some areas could be winners. Cereal production in northern and eastern Kazakhstan could benefit from the longer growing season, warmer winters, and slight increase in winter precipitation, while others could be losers. Western Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, where frequent droughts could negatively affect cotton production, increase water demand for irrigation, and exacerbate desertification. In the Indo-Gangetic plains of South Asia there could be a decrease of about 50% in the most favorable and high-yielding wheat area as a result of heat stress at 2 times CO2. Sea level rise will inundate low-lying areas and will especially affect rice-growing regions. Many potential adaptation strategies are being practiced and proposed, but research studies on their effectiveness are still few. Terrestrial systems in many parts of Asia have responded to recent climate change with shifts in the phenologies, growth rates, and the distributions of plant species, and with permafrost degradation. And the projected changes in climate during the 21st century will increase these impacts. High confidence. Left curly bracket 24.4.2 right curly bracket. Boreal trees will likely invade treeless Arctic vegetation, while evergreen conifers will likely invade deciduous larch forest. Large changes may also occur in arid and semi-arid areas, but uncertainties in precipitation projections make these more difficult to predict. The rates of vegetation change in the more densely populated parts of Asia may be reduced by the impact of habitat fragmentation on seed dispersal, while the impacts of projected climate changes on the vegetation of the lowland tropics are currently poorly understood. Changes in animal distributions have also been projected, in response to both direct impacts of climate change and indirect impacts through changes in the availability of suitable habitats. Coastal and marine systems in Asia are under increasing stress from both climatic and non-climatic drivers. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.4.3 right curly bracket. It is likely that mean sea level rise will contribute to upward trends in extreme coastal high water levels. Left curly bracket WGI AR5 3, 7, 6 right curly bracket in the Asian Arctic. Rising sea levels are expected to interact with projected changes in permafrost and the length of the ice-free season to cause increased rates of coastal erosion. Medium evidence. High agreement. Mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrass beds may decline unless they can move inland, while coastal freshwater swamps and marshes will be vulnerable to saltwater intrusion with rising sea levels. Widespread damage to coral reefs correlated with episodes of high sea surface temperature has been reported in recent decades, and there is high confidence that damage to reefs will increase during the 21st century as a result of both warming and ocean acidification. Marine biodiversity is expected to increase at temperate latitudes as warm water species expand their ranges northward. High confidence. but may decrease in the tropics if thermal tolerance limits are exceeded. Medium confidence. Multiple stresses caused by rapid urbanization, industrialization, and economic development will be compounded by climate change. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.47 right curly bracket. Climate change is expected to adversely affect the sustainable development capabilities of most Asian developing countries by aggravating pressures on natural resources and the environment. Development of sustainable cities in Asia with fewer fossil fuel-driven vehicles and with more trees and greenery would have a number of co-benefits, including improved public health. Chapter 24 Asia. 1330. Asia Chapter 24. Extreme Climate Event. Asia Chapter 24.
I will point out that the number at the bottom of the page, as it just read 1330, yes, that is in fact the page number of the report. If you read the report in its singular form, that's where we'd be, 1330. We obviously didn't start at page 1. And as I said, there's no tables or figures in this particular section, so I don't know. Have you had a cookie recently? You're allowed to eat a cookie in this particular class.
Extreme climate events will have an increasing impact on human health, security, livelihoods, and poverty, with the type and magnitude of impact varying across Asia. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.4.6 right curly bracket. More frequent and intense heat waves in Asia will increase mortality and morbidity in vulnerable groups. Increases in heavy rain and temperature will increase the risk of diarrheal diseases, dengue fever, and malaria. Increases in floods and droughts will exacerbate rural poverty in parts of Asia as a result of negative impacts on the rice crop and resulting increases in food prices and the cost of living. Studies of observed climate changes and their impacts are still inadequate for many areas, particularly in North, Central, and West Asia. High confidence. Dart. Left curly bracket 24.8 right curly bracket. Improved projections for precipitation, and thus water supply, are most urgently needed. Understanding of climate change impacts on ecosystems in Asia is currently limited by the incompleteness and inaccessibility of biodiversity information. Major research gaps in the tropics include the temperature dependence of carbon fixation by tropical trees and the thermal tolerances and acclimation capacities of both plants and animals. Interactions between climate change and the direct impacts of rising CO2 on crops and natural ecosystems are also currently poorly understood. More research is needed on impacts, vulnerability, and adaptation in urban settlements, especially cities with populations of less than 500,000. More generally, there is a need to develop low-cost adaptation measures appropriate to the least developed parts of the region. 24. 1331. 24. 24.1. Library. Button.
Okie dokie.
Library. 22 Africa. 23 24 Asia. 25 Australasia. 25 Library. Button.
So,
App switcher. Books. Safari.
we've gone
Active.
through 2 chapters. There's 2 chapters left, plus that introduction.
Safari.
So we're a fair chunk in.
Back.
This
Dim.
is the, what call them, Paul, the 4th inning stretch, the midway stretch. It's halftime, like in football.
Working groups.
We're not going to look at that. We're going to look at kittens.
Back.
That, of course, is what the
Dim.
internet was
Button.
invented for, was pictures of kittens. So,
About US.
here we are.
Page 2 of 8.
This page,
Tabs. Address. Who left us this? Oscar and our number 1 in loving Licky Oscar 2000 R.I.P. Oscar
is obviously in memory of our cat Oscar, who we had from 2014 to 2018. He was the Uber cat. In the introduction, I actually described one of his urban legend tales, which is not an urban legend because I was there.
2000 Licky in loving our number Oscar in action. Who left us? Peekaboo. Happy. Oscar and photo image. Oscar and copy link. Play. Button.
So,
Oscar and ME. Indefinite time.
given I'm legally blind, it was kind of funny that I should
0 seconds.
decide to video an occurrence that we had, which is that Oscar actually would go for walks with me. To my astonishment, he would go with me when I did Tai Chi, and he'd sit on the bench and crab at me quite loudly, like, "Let's go, I'm done." That's the sound of a phone dropping. I use that as a segue for some reason. You'll have to excuse that. And then I discovered one time I just went for a walk. I decided to see if he'd come with me, and we went for like a 20-minute walk, and he followed me all around. So I'm imagining how this must look from the outside. A blind guy video recording his walk and being followed by a cat. Oscar, but he did, and he I don't know if you can tell how big he is. He's like a small dog. His head was bigger than my fist.
Oh, you're over there.
But such a loving creature. And the thing is, I noticed that he would precede me quite often. I think he knew these people because he would be gone for a day sometimes when he left, meandering the neighborhood. I met more people in the neighborhood because of Oscar than I did on my own, because so many people would say, "Is that your cat? Oh, he's a wonderful, marvelous thing." I've said this a few times. Anyway, this is... I've done stranger things. Anyway, this is just to give you a bit of a brain break from the endless blithering on about scientific jargon and stuff. And anytime I can pass on Oscar the Uber Cat's image is a good day.
You passed me. Catching up.
Stop recording video.
He had such a huge tail.
Page 4 of 8.
Anyways, thanks for being around, Oscar. Break's over.
Back. Dimmed. Button. App switcher. Files. File. Books. Active. Books. Warming is projected. 25. 20. Bookmark. Cert. Markup. 25. Australasia. Mark. Cert. Bookmark. 25. Executive summary. The regional climate is changing. Very high confidence. The region continues to demonstrate long-term trends toward higher surface air and sea surface temperatures, more hot extremes and fewer cold extremes, and changed rainfall patterns. Over the past 50 years, increasing greenhouse gas concentrations have contributed to rising average temperature in Australia, high confidence, and New Zealand medium confidence, and decreasing rainfall in southwestern Australia, high confidence. Dart, left curly bracket 25.2, table 25, 1 right curly bracket. Warming is projected to continue through the 21st century virtually certain, along with other changes in climate. Warming is expected to be associated with rising snow lines, very high confidence, more frequent hot extremes, less frequent cold extremes, high confidence, and increasing extreme rainfall related to flood risk in many locations, medium confidence. Annual average rainfall is expected to decrease in southwestern Australia, high confidence, and elsewhere in most of far southern Australia and the northeast South Island and northern and eastern North Island of New Zealand medium confidence. And to increase in other parts of New Zealand medium confidence. Tropical cyclones are projected to increase in intensity but remain similar or decrease in numbers, low confidence, and fire weather is projected to increase in most of southern Australia, high confidence, and many parts of New Zealand, medium confidence. Regional sea level rise will very likely exceed the historical rate, 1971 to 2010, consistent with global mean trends, left curly bracket 25.2, table 25, 1, box 25, 6, WGIAR5 13.56 right curly bracket. Uncertainty in projected rainfall changes remains large for many parts of Australia and New Zealand, which creates significant challenges for adaptation. For example, Projections for average annual runoff in far southeastern Australia ranged from little change to a 40% decline for 2 degrees Celsius global warming above current levels. The dry end of these scenarios would have severe implications for agriculture, rural livelihoods, ecosystems, and urban water supply, and would increase the need for transformational adaptation. High confidence. Dart, left curly bracket 25.2, 25.5.1, 25.6.1, 25.7.2, boxes 25, 2, 25, 5 right curly bracket. Recent extreme climatic events show significant vulnerability of some ecosystems and many human systems to current climate variability, very high confidence. And the frequency and/or intensity of such events is projected to increase in many locations, medium to high confidence. For example, high sea surface temperatures have repeatedly bleached coral reefs in northeastern Australia, since the late 1970s, and more recently in Western Australia. Recent floods in Australia and New Zealand caused severe damage to infrastructure and settlements and 35 deaths in Queensland alone. 2011, the Victorian heat wave, 2009, increased heat-related morbidity and was associated with more than 300 excess deaths, while intense bushfires destroyed more than 2,000 buildings and led to 173 deaths, and widespread drought in Southeast Australia, 1997 to 2009, and many parts of New Zealand, 2007 to 2009, 2012 to 2013, resulted in substantial economic losses, e.g., regional gross domestic product, GDP, in the southern Murray-Darling Basin was below forecast by about 5.7% in 2007 to 2008, and New Zealand lost about 3.6 billion New Zealand dollars in direct and off-farm output in 2007 to 2009. Left curly bracket 25, 6, 2, 25, 8, 1, table 25 1, boxes 25 5, 25 6, 25 8 right curly bracket. Without adaptation, further changes in climate, atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2, and ocean acidity are projected to have substantial impacts on water resources, coastal ecosystems, infrastructure, health, agriculture, and biodiversity. High confidence. Freshwater resources are projected to decline in far southwest and far southeast mainland Australia. High confidence. And for rivers originating in the northeast of the South Island and east and north of the North Island of New Zealand, medium confidence. Rising sea levels and increasing heavy rainfall are projected to increase erosion and inundation, with consequent damages to many low-lying ecosystems, infrastructure, and housing. Increasing heat waves will increase risks to human health. Rainfall changes and rising temperatures will shift agricultural production zones, and many native species will suffer from range contractions and some may face local or even global extinction. Left curly bracket 25.5.1, 25.6.12, 25.7.2, 25.7.4, boxes 25, 1, 25, 5, 25, 8 right curly bracket. Some sectors in some locations have the potential to benefit from projected changes in climate and increasing atmospheric CO2, high confidence. Examples include reduced winter mortality, low confidence, reduced energy demand for winter heating in New Zealand and southern parts of Australia, and forest growth in cooler regions except where soil nutrients or rainfall are limiting. Spring pasture growth in cooler regions would also increase and be beneficial for animal production if it can be utilized. Left curly bracket 25.7.12, 25.7.4, 25.8.1 right curly bracket. Adaptation is already occurring and adaptation planning is becoming embedded in some planning processes, albeit mostly at the conceptual rather than implementation level. High confidence. Many solutions for reducing energy and water consumption in urban areas with co-benefits for climate change adaptation, e.g., greening cities and recycling water, are already being implemented. Planning for Chapter 25 Australasia 1374. Australasia Chapter 25. Reduced water availability in southern Australia and for sea level rise in both countries is becoming adopted widely, although implementation of specific policies remains piecemeal, subject to political changes, and open to legal challenges. Left curly bracket 25.4, boxes. Book, file, active. Files, active. Files, done. Item list, done. Button, done. Browse. Table 22-3, August 30th. New folder. Table 22-3, 2 item, 16 graphics. Back button.
That's fine.
Browse. Australasia.
Australasia.
3 item. Selected.
Now they
Browse.
mention
Heading.
box images many times throughout this particular section.
Table 20. List. CCCR1.
I can only find one
August 30th,
for this
2020
chapter
at
online.
19,
I don't know if they
43,
changed them
selected.
to calling them
Done,
figures
done.
or something else.
Button.
Of course, I couldn't interpret because it's a JPEG and I can't see it. I can't read it or anything. I don't know if there are other things. If someone else finds figures that make reference to the boxes they keep listing, please let me know. And apparently, I forgot to start Do Not Disturb.
Okay, I turned on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Jeez. Okay. That was a pause moment, and away we go.
App switcher, Safari, App Books, Active. Adaptive capacity is reduced water adaptive capacity is generally high in many human systems, but implementation faces major constraints, especially for transformational responses at local and community levels. High confidence. Efforts to understand and enhance adaptive capacity and adaptation processes have increased since the AR5, particularly in Australia. Constraints on implementation arise from absence of a consistent information base and uncertainty about projected impacts, limited financial and human resources to assess local risks and to develop and implement effective policies and rules, limited integration of different levels of governance, lack of binding guidance on principles and priorities, different attitudes toward the risks associated with climate change, and different values placed on objects and places at risk. Left curly bracket 25.4, 25.10.3, table 25, 2, box 25, 1 right curly bracket. Indigenous peoples in both Australia and New Zealand have higher than average exposure to climate change because of a heavy reliance on climate-sensitive primary industries and strong social connections to the natural environment, and face particular constraints to adaptation, medium confidence, social status and representation, health, infrastructure and economic issues, and engagement with natural resource industries constrain adaptation and are only partly offset by intrinsic adaptive capacity, high confidence. Some proposed responses to climate change may provide economic opportunities, particularly in New Zealand related to forestry. Torres Strait communities are vulnerable even to small sea level rises, high confidence. Left curly bracket 25.3, 25.8.2 right curly bracket. We identify 8 regional key risks during the 21st century based on the severity of potential impacts for different levels of warming, uniqueness of the systems affected, and adaptation options, high confidence. These risks differ in the degree to which they can be managed via adaptation and mitigation, and some are more likely to be realized than others, but all warrant attention from a risk management perspective. Some potential impacts can be delayed but now appear very difficult to avoid entirely, even with globally effective mitigation and planned adaptation. Significant change in community composition and structure of coral reef systems in Australia, driven by increasing sea surface temperatures and ocean acidification. The ability of corals to adapt naturally to rising temperatures and acidification appears limited. 25. And insufficient to offset the detrimental effects. Left curly bracket 25.6.2, 30.5, box CCCR right curly bracket loss of montane ecosystems and some native species in Australia, driven by rising temperatures and snow lines. Increased fire risk, and drying trends, fragmentation of landscapes, limited dispersal, and limited rate of evolutionary change constrain adaptation options. left curly bracket 25.6.1 right curly bracket. Bullet. Some impacts have the potential to be severe but can be reduced substantially by globally effective mitigation combined with adaptation. List start. With the need for transformational adaptation increasing with the rate and magnitude of climate change. Increased frequency and intensity of flood damage to settlements and infrastructure in Australia and New Zealand, driven by increasing extreme rainfall. Although the amount of change remains uncertain, in many locations, continued reliance on increased protection alone would become progressively less feasible. Left curly bracket 25.4.2, 25.10.3, Table 25, 1, Box 25, 8 right curly bracket. Constraints on water resources in southern Australia, driven by rising temperatures and reduced cool season rainfall, integrated responses encompassing management of supply, recycling, water conservation, and increased efficiency across all sectors are available. And some are being implemented in areas already facing shortages. Left curly bracket 25.2, 25.5.2, Box 25, 2 right curly bracket. Increased morbidity, mortality, and infrastructure damages during heat waves in Australia, resulting from increased frequency and magnitude of extreme high temperatures. Vulnerable populations include the elderly and those with existing chronic diseases. Population increases and aging trends constrain effectiveness of adaptation responses. Left curly bracket 25.8.1 right curly bracket. Increased damages to ecosystems and settlements, economic losses, and risks to human life from wildfires in most of southern Australia and many parts of New Zealand, driven by rising temperatures and drying trends. Local planning mechanisms, building design, early warning systems, and public education can assist with adaptation and are being implemented in regions that have experienced major events. Left curly bracket 25.2, 25.6.1, 25.7.1, Table 25, 1, Box 25, 6 right curly bracket. Bullet. For some impacts, severity depends on changes in climate variables that span a particularly large range, even for a given global temperature change. The most severe changes would present major challenges if realized. Increasing risks to coastal infrastructure and low-lying ecosystems in Australia and New Zealand from continuing sea level rise, with widespread damages toward the upper end of projected sea level rise ranges. Managed retreat is a long-term adaptation strategy for 1375. List end. Chapter 25 Australasia. Human systems. But options for some natural ecosystems are limited owing to the rapidity of change and lack of suitable space for landward migration. Risks from sea level rise continue to increase beyond 2100 even if temperatures are stabilized. Left curly bracket 25.4.2, 25. Safari. Files. Active.
Dun, 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 dun.
Files. Done. Button. Done. Browse. Selected. Name. Date. Size. Table 25. CCCR1. Table 25-1. August 3rd. Selected.
25-1.
Done. Button.
I hope these tables are of use. I have no idea. I know that in one of their panel discussions, the IPCC themselves complained about some of their own images being too dense to be useful. I hope that doesn't apply to these.
App switcher. Safari. Active. Books. Active. Human systems but up. Chapter 20. Human systems but up. Significant reduction in agricultural production in the Murray-Darling Basin and far southeastern and southwestern Australia if scenarios of severe drying are realised. More efficient water use, allocation, and trading would increase the resilience of systems in the near term but cannot prevent significant reductions in agricultural production and severe consequences for ecosystems and some rural communities at the dry end of the projected changes. Left curly bracket 25.2, 25.5.2, 25.7.2, boxes 25, 2, 25, 5 right curly bracket. Significant synergies and trade-offs exist between alternative adaptation responses, and between mitigation and adaptation responses. Interactions occur both within Australasia and between Australasia and the rest of the world. Very high confidence. Full stop. Increasing efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change imply an increasing complexity of interactions, particularly at the intersections among water, energy, and biodiversity. But tools to understand and manage these interactions remain limited. Flow-on effects from climate change impacts and responses outside Australasia have the potential to outweigh some of the direct impacts within the region, particularly economic impacts on trade-intensive sectors such as agriculture, medium confidence, and tourism. Limited evidence, high agreement, but they remain among the least explored issues. Left curly bracket 25.7.5, 25.9.12, box 25, 10 right curly bracket. Understanding of future vulnerability of human and mixed human natural systems to climate change remains limited due to incomplete consideration of socio-economic dimensions. Very high confidence. Future vulnerability will depend on factors such as wealth and its distribution across society, patterns of aging, access to technology and information, labor force participation, societal values, and mechanisms and institutions to resolve conflicts. These dimensions have received only limited attention and are rarely included in vulnerability assessments, and frameworks to integrate social, psychological, and cultural dimensions of vulnerability with biophysical impacts and economic losses are lacking. In addition, conclusions for New Zealand in many sectors, even for biophysical impacts, are based on limited studies that often use a narrow set of assumptions, models, and data, and hence have not explored the full range of potential outcomes. Left curly bracket 25.34, 25.11 right curly bracket 25. 1376. Australasia. Chapter 25. 25.1. Library. Button. Library. Back button. App switcher. Safari. Files. Active.
Files, by the way,
Files. Done. Item list.
is
Button.
a cloud storage.
Table 25-1. Table 25-2. Table 25-2. Selected.
Is a cloud
Done.
storage space
Button.
where I keep documents provided by Apple. I subscribe to that. So when it goes to files, those are my documents that I've downloaded. Clearly, you can guess from who. Break time. I think that you know, I mentioned all these other things. I suppose drinking water is a good idea too. Maybe going and having a drink of water, you know, helps keep the brain hydrated and other stuff. I went and got water myself, so it occurred to me I've never mentioned water. I've been promoting drugs and caffeine and sugar and stuff, and you know, water works too. In any event, we're now on to the last chapter.
File. Safari. Books. Active. Books. Library. Back button. Library. 22 Africa. 2. Front matter part A.
Whoops.
SPM summary for Poly. 2 Foundation. 24
Oh,
Asia.
I know what's happened.
Bookstore. Selected. Library.
You
Selected.
say that.
Library. Tab. 2 of 5. Library. Heading. Edit. Collections. But
It resets every once in a while.
ASIM. 2.
Because it thinks,
Rows
I
10
don't know
to
what it thinks.
Rows 22 to the Summon Journal AR5 Impacts.
Here we go.
Adaptations. Library. Back button. 3 Freshwater Resource. Page 2 of set. Page 3. 19 Emergent.
Oh look, the chapter's in order.
24 Asia. 25 or 26 North America. 27 Central and South America.
It's funny, I haven't listened to the North America one
27
yet, so
Central.
I'm
Library.
wondering what it says about us.
Button. Climate projections. 27. Executive summary. Significant trends in precipitation and temperature have been observed in Central America, CA, and South America, SA, high confidence. In addition, changes in climate variability and in extreme events have severely affected the region, medium confidence. Increasing trends in annual rainfall in southeastern South America, CISA, 0.6 mm day 150 years 1 during 1950 to 2008, contrast with decreasing trends in CA and central southern Chile, minus 1 mm day 150 years 1 during 1950 to 2008. Warming has been detected throughout CA and SA near 0, 7 degrees Celsius to 1 degree Celsius 40 years 1 since the mid-1970s, except for a cooling off the Chilean coast of about minus 10 degrees Celsius 40 years 1. Increases in temperature extremes have been identified in CA and most of tropical and subtropical SA medium confidence, while more frequent extreme rainfall in CISA has favored the occurrence of landslides and flash floods, medium confidence. Left curly bracket 27. 2. 1. 1. Table 27. 1. Box 27. 1 right curly bracket. Climate projections suggest increases in temperature, and increases or decreases in precipitation for CA and SA by 2100, medium confidence. In post-fourth assessment report, AR4, climate projections, derived from dynamic downscaling forced by coupled model intercomparison project phase 3, CMIP3, models for various special report on emission scenarios, SRES, scenarios, and from different global climate models from the CMIP5 for various representative concentration pathways, RCPs, 4.5 and 8.5, warming varies from +1, 6 degrees Celsius to +4, 0 degrees Celsius in CA, and +1, 7 degrees Celsius to +6, 7 degrees Celsius in SA medium confidence. Rainfall changes for CA range between -22 and +7% by 2100, while in SA rainfall varies geographically, most notably showing a reduction of -22% in northeast Brazil, and an increase of +25% in CISA, low confidence. By 2100 projections show an increase in dry spells in tropical SA east of the Andes, and in warm days and nights in most of SA medium confidence. Left curly bracket 27. 2. 1. 2. Table 27. 2 right curly bracket. Changes in streamflow and water availability have been observed and projected to continue in the future in CA and SA, affecting already vulnerable regions, high confidence. The Andean cryosphere is retreating, affecting the seasonal distribution of streamflows, high confidence. Left curly bracket table 27, 3 right curly bracket increasing runoffs in the La Plata River Basin and decreasing ones in the central Andes, Chile, Argentina, and in CA in the second half of the 20th century were associated with changes in precipitation, high confidence. Risk of water supply shortages will increase owing to precipitation reductions and evapotranspiration increases in semi-arid regions, high confidence. Left curly bracket table 27, 4 right curly bracket, thus affecting water supply for cities. High confidence, left curly bracket 27, 3, 1, 1, 27.3.5 right curly bracket, hydropower generation, high confidence, left curly bracket 27.3.6, 27.6.1 right curly bracket. And agriculture, left curly bracket 27, 3, 1, 1 right curly bracket. Current practices to reduce the mismatch between water supply and demand could be used to reduce future vulnerability, medium confidence. Ongoing constitutional and legal reforms toward more efficient and effective water resources management and coordination constitute another adaptation strategy, medium confidence. Left curly bracket 27, 3, 1, 2 right curly bracket. Land use change contributes significantly to environmental degradation, exacerbating the negative impacts of climate change, high confidence. Deforestation and land degradation are attributed mainly to increased extensive and intensive agriculture. The agricultural expansion, in some regions associated with increases in precipitation, has affected fragile ecosystems, such as the edges of the Amazon forest and the tropical Andes. Even though deforestation rates in the Amazon have decreased substantially since 2004 to a value of 4,656 square kilometers (1 in 2012, other regions such as the Cerrado still present high levels of deforestation, with average rates as high as 14,179 square kilometers (1 for the period 2002 to 2008. Left curly bracket 27.2.2.1 right curly bracket. Conversion of natural ecosystems is the main cause of biodiversity and ecosystem loss in the region, and is a driver of anthropogenic climate change. High confidence. Climate change is expected to increase the rates of species extinction. Medium confidence. For instance, vertebrate species turnover until 2100 will be as high as 90% in specific areas of CA and the Andes Mountains. In Brazil, distribution of some groups of birds and plants will be dislocated southward, where there are fewer natural habitats remaining. However, CA and SA have still large extensions of natural vegetation cover, for which the Amazon is the main example. Left curly bracket 27.3.2.1 right curly bracket. Ecosystem based adaptation practices are increasingly common across the region, such as the effective management and establishment of protected areas, conservation agreements, and community management of natural areas. Left curly bracket 27.3.2.2 right curly bracket. Socio-economic conditions have improved since AR4, however, there is still a high and persistent level of poverty in most countries, resulting in high vulnerability and increasing risk to climate variability and change. High confidence. Poverty levels in most countries remain high, 45% for CA and 30% for SA for year 2010, in spite of the sustained economic growth observed in the last decade. The Human Development Index varies greatly between countries, from Chile and Argentina with the highest values to Guatemala and Nicaragua with the Chapter 27 Central and South America, 1502. Central and South America Chapter 27. Lowest values in 2007. The economic inequality translates into inequality in access to water, sanitation, and adequate housing, particularly for the most vulnerable groups, translating into low adaptive capacities to climate change. Left curly bracket 27.2. Safari active. Safari files
That's what I
active.
want.
Files done button. Item list button. CCCR1 table 25 table 25-2 JPEG image 1 table 25-1 JPEG image 2.2.
Oh, wait a minute.
Done button. Done.
That's Australasia, isn't it?
Dismiss pop-up. 3 of 3 Wi-Fi. CCC table 25-1 C done button. Done.
Yeah, done means...
Done. C done. But done. Done. But done. Table 25-2 dismiss pop-up. Done button.
Okay.
Done. Browse. Head. Table 25-1 selected. Name. But search. Selected. Date. But table 25 selected. Name. CCCR1 search. Graphics. Back.
Boy.
Browse.
I'll get
Heading.
to this eventually.
Australasia. Central South
There we
America.
go.
Selected. Browse. Heading. Table 27. Table 20. List view. Table 27-4A. Selected.
Ah, right.
Table 20. Done. Button.
It's table 4A and 4B. So I'm thinking that means they need to be seen together. So I'm just going to present this for a few seconds. Pause the video at will. Have a look. And then...
Done. Item list. Button. Table 27-4B. JPEG im. Done.
There's
Button.
B. Clearly. I wonder what you're looking at. It's not just a bunch of people having a cafe at a cafe au lait or something at a bistro in Buenos Aires or something, is it? I hope not.
App switcher. Safari. Books. Active.
Like I have a clue. Café au lait is French, right?
Sea level rise, SLR, and human active. Central and lowest values into Central and bookmarks. Central and South America lowest values in 2007. The economic inequality translates in Central and South America chapter 27. Lowest value sea level rise, SLR, and human activities on coastal and marine ecosystems pose threats to fish stocks, corals, mangroves, recreation and tourism, and control of diseases. High confidence. SLR varied from 2 to 7 mm year 1 between 1950 and 2008. Frequent coral bleaching events associated with ocean warming and acidification occur in the Mesoamerican coral reef. In CA and SA, the main drivers of mangrove loss are deforestation and land conversion to agriculture and shrimp ponds. Left curly bracket 27.3.3.1 right curly bracket Brazilian fisheries co-management. A participatory multi-stakeholder process is an example of adaptation as it favors a balance between conservation of marine biodiversity, the improvement of livelihoods, and the cultural survival of traditional populations. Left curly bracket 27.3.3.2 right curly bracket. Changes in agricultural productivity with consequences for food security associated with climate change are expected to exhibit large spatial variability. Medium confidence. In CISA, where projections indicate more rainfall, average productivity could be sustained or increased until the mid-century. Medium confidence. SRES, A2, B2, left curly bracket table 27, 5 right curly bracket in CA. Northeast of Brazil, and parts of the Andean region, increases in temperature and decreases in rainfall could decrease the productivity in the short term, by 2030, threatening the food security of the poorest population. Medium confidence. Dart, left curly bracket table 27, 5 right curly bracket considering that SA will be a key food producing region in the future. One of the challenges will be to increase the food and bioenergy quality and production while maintaining environmental sustainability under climate change. Left curly bracket 27.3.4.1 right curly bracket Some adaptation measures include crop, risk, and water use management along with genetic improvement. High confidence. Left curly bracket 27.3.4.2 right curly bracket. Renewable energy based on biomass has a potential impact on land use change and deforestation and could be affected by climate change. Medium confidence. Sugarcane and soil likely to respond positively to CO2 and temperature changes, even with a decrease in water availability, with an increase in productivity and production. High confidence. The expansion of sugarcane, soy, and oil palm may have some effect on land use, leading to deforestation in parts of the Amazon and CA, among other regions, and loss of employment in some countries. Medium confidence. Dart, left curly bracket 27.3.6.1 right curly bracket advances in second generation bioethanol from sugarcane and other feedstocks will be important as a measure of mitigation. Left curly bracket 27.3.6.2 right curly bracket. Changes in weather and climatic patterns are negatively affecting human health in CA and SA, by increasing morbidity, mortality, and disabilities. High confidence, and through the emergence of diseases in previously non-endemic areas. High confidence. With very high confidence, climate-related drivers are associated with respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, vector and waterborne diseases, malaria, dengue, yellow fever, leishmaniasis, cholera, and other diarrheal diseases. Hantavirus users and rotavirus users, chronic kidney diseases, and psychological trauma. Air pollution is associated with pregnancy-related outcomes and diabetes, among others. Left curly bracket 27.3.7.1 right curly bracket vulnerabilities vary with geography, age, gender, race, ethnicity, and socio-economic status, and arising in large cities, very high confidence, left curly bracket 27.3.7.2 right curly bracket climate change will exacerbate current and future risks to health. Given the region's population growth rates and vulnerabilities in existing health, water, sanitation and waste collection systems, nutrition, pollution, and food production in poor regions, medium confidence. In many CA and SA countries, a first step toward adaptation to future climate changes is to reduce the vulnerability to present climate. Long-term planning and the related human and financial resource needs may be seen as conflicting with the present social deficit in the welfare of the CA and SA population. Various examples demonstrate possible synergies between development, adaptation, and mitigation planning, which can help local communities and governments to allocate efficiently available resources in the design of strategies to reduce vulnerability. However, the generalization of such actions at a continental scale requires that both the CA and SA citizens and governments address the challenge of building a new governance model, where imperative development needs, vulnerability reduction, and adaptation strategies to climate stresses will be truly intertwined. Left curly bracket 27.3.4, 27.45 right curly bracket 27. 1503. 27. 27.1 Introduction.
Okie doke.
27.1 App switcher. Books. Active. Files. Safari. Active. Actions of
almost
files.
forgot.
Active. Files. Done. Table 27-4B. Markup.
Oh, right, we worked with
Switch
both of them,
button.
that's right.
Table item list. Done.
Okay,
Button. Done. Browse. Heading.
because we
App
saw both
switcher.
of them at once.
Safari. Safari. Books. Active.
So,
Books. Library.
I don't know about
Button.
you, but clearly I
App
need to go
switcher.
for a walk,
Safari. Safari.
because I'm supposed to be here. So, that's the end of the
Safari.
presentation. Congratulations.
Back.
I'm
Dimmed.
definitely going to go for a
Button.
walk.
AR5 Climate Change 2014 Impacts,
Again, all of the
Adaptation,
information
and Vulnerability.
on all
Heading
of
Level
the
1.
links and documents and download areas and accreditation for this thing will be laid out in great detail in the comments, including the time points for chapter changes as I was going through, which I will know when I'm done.
Back. Dimmed. Button.
These presentations are tied to the meetup I've created on meetup.com called Understanding the IPCC. I try to have them at the last Monday of every month. These things are getting so complex and difficult, it's being a challenge, but we have a meeting anyways. I was talking to a couple of engineers at the end of last month. It was quite interesting. I encourage you to join us. I encourage you to spread this information around to someone who would care about why to do these things. You do them because of the impacts, the adaptation, and the vulnerability. That's why. And we'll see you.
3 of 3 Wi-Fi bars.
Part B
Mother.
will be
Status bar
online
item.
before the end of next month.
1636. Control send. AirDrop. Mute. Do. Brightness. Screen mirroring. Apple T. Selected. Selected. Screen recording. Button. Selected. Stop recording. Stop.